Welcome to the Millionaire Mentorship Podcast. We discuss real estate investing, entrepreneurship, and business to help you retire and become financially free. Make sure you share this podcast with someone who could benefit from it and leave us a 5-star review. It truly helps me out. This show will mentor you towards financial freedom. If I can do it, so can you.
Welcome to the Millionaire Mentorship Podcast. I have a very special guest today, Raquel Quinet from Scottsdale, Arizona, formerly California. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. So we were just talking pre-show. So you are basically a coach to real estate entrepreneurs, CEOs, agents. And I told you in my past life, I sold about 3,000 homes. You've sold thousands of homes. I can tell just from the last year you talked about it. Tell me a little bit about your story and your journey.
Yeah, I actually got into real estate by accident at the age of 19. I wanted to become a real estate investor. I got my real estate license through one of those infomercials. And little did I know that every broker in town was going to call you and ask you if you are going to hang your license at their brokerage. When I did, it was in Union City, California. At the time, the company was called ERA. It is now Intero. And I fell in love with real estate. I didn't know at the time that when they actually hired you, it was commission only. I mean, I was that naive, that young. I just knew that I was like, hey, I want to become an investor. I need to ask people for money. So let me get my license to kind of figure this whole thing out. And I did retail, had a mentor. And then after a year, it was always my goal to buy an investment property. So at the age of 20, I bought 2 investment properties. Luckily I had amazing people around me that said, you've got to invest in real estate. And I bought those actually in Las Vegas, where you're from. So I couldn't afford anything in California in the Bay Area. And so my mentor told me, go to Las Vegas. And I put $1,000 on a brand new build in 2 areas. And by the time it was done, it was 130 is when I bought it for, and it was worth over 300 by the time construction was done. So it was like, oh, this is how investing works.
I caught the other end. I caught the other end of that. So I know exactly when you bought. I bought right after that when it was worth 250, and then I bought it and it went to 130 with the same $1,000.
Yeah, well, I also did that too.
Okay.
Right. So I did real estate. I was probably one of the very first teams in the Bay Area because I was going to college, investing, and then also doing real estate. And I quickly found out that I didn't have enough hours in the day. So I built a real estate team. I also owned a mortgage company a few years later, and because all these mortgage companies were coming to our team and saying, can we do your mortgages? I was like, how can I have a piece of that? How can we become partners? Yeah. And so that was the start of like building a real estate team. We had a team of 9 at the time in the Bay Area. I had a mortgage company, and then I wanted to go to Arizona to invest. And that was the time where I bought properties, and a year later it was like nothing. So we built a custom home. I had a little one at the time, and now he's 18. And I said, hey, what would it look like to buy something out of state, to move? If I don't like it, I can always move back. So I kind of did the California, Arizona thing for a while we were running the team. I also took a team leader job for Keller Williams of a failing brokerage, had no database here in Arizona, and became a team leader, learned how to recruit, learned leadership. We took that failing market center into one of the top 10 of all of KW. So that kind of put my hat on leadership. And, after having your own business as a mortgage company and a team, and then going into corporate, I learned a ton in the recession, right? Because it was all about short sales. It was all about REOs. When I came into the market as a team leader, a lot of the agents in my office were order takers. They really didn't learn how to sell. And so I had to quickly figure out, as the market was declining, how we were going to get production in the office. So, that was a fun journey. I learned a ton of leadership lessons during that. When your agents are getting their homes foreclosed, when agents are getting their cars repossessed in your own parking lot, you grow up a lot. Yeah. And I just remember those years weren't fun, but if we can make it through those years, then we could, make it through a lot of different cycles. And then I had my second child. So I took step down from the leadership realm. At the time, I had 300 agents, and I just knew that I couldn't serve them to their best ability. So I took some time off, and I ended up building another team, and it became an REO team because that was the market. And I did it with a lot of systems, a lot of VAs back in 2010 or so. And just trying to figure out systems. And I gave all my buyer deals to the office because obviously I had relationships with the agents in the office. And then we ended up building a normal retail team in Goodyear, Arizona. We learned about expansion at the time and opened one in Scottsdale, in Chandler. And then we took that team into 23 cities because we thought expansion was really cool. And you quickly find out that like not every office, not every location runs exactly the same. And so you figure out scalability, you figure out systems. And then after that, I basically took some consulting jobs. I worked up for startups for a guy named Kent Clothier, who's really big in the investment space. Boardroom, yes. So got to be part of Scale and Escape in some of those events. And I learned a ton from just being around him as like my mentor, the investing space, learning about different events. And I was like, wow, what a really cool freedom, like lifestyle where you get to hold events, be with your kids and not always be in the go. Cause I felt like in retail, every day was you get up, it's Groundhog Day. And like, agents always need something new, right? Even in offices, like you can just never leave it alone, but you can actually build a scalable business in an investment space or in an education business. And so that's kind of what landed me into the coaching and the consulting. He's like, Raquel, you got a lot of experience. Why don't you share that knowledge? And so when the pandemic had hit, there was a bunch of teams that came out to Arizona and asked, how do I lead my team remotely, Raquel? Because you've always been doing Zoom calls. I have no idea how to continue to prospect with my team and still put up numbers. So I had a couple people that are at different brands today, EXP, KW, and that became my clients. And then that's how Play Bigger coaching kind of started.
That's awesome. Yeah. And we sound like we have similar journeys. I came from Seattle to Las Vegas and was betting on the upside that you saw and then had no idea what the hell I was doing. Just got my real estate license and then, almost went into bankruptcy, held on to those houses for like, I don't know, 17 years, I think it was, until they finally got right side up. But I identify with your story a lot because, that REO days were like the best days for me as an agent. I mean, I literally went from the point of bankruptcy to then selling 2,200 homes in 5 years. And you're right. There's a lot of learning that happens in there. One thing you mentioned a lot when you were giving that intro was leadership. And as somebody who's realizing that that's my next thing I really need to tackle, because to grow my business, and you probably know this, you got to become an excellent leader. And even if you think you're a great leader, I'm really curious on what core values you think leadership is, and how do you become a great leader?
Well, that's a loaded question because
might be a little bit.
Leadership can mean so many different things. And this is what I tell my kids. And I've told my kids, I'm not going to be there to tell you what's right or wrong, but I want you to be a leader even when nobody's watching. Right. And I've said that to them since they were in kindergarten when I would drop them off to school, because, you never know who's on the other side, especially now with social media, is, how you show up can really impact somebody's impression on you. Yeah. Right. And sometimes you have to self-manage first. And I thought that being a top agent or being a top producer was going to equate to being a great leader. And we quickly realized that that's not always the case. Sometimes people are just great top producers and they're just not great leaders, or they don't love managing people. I think a great leader could actually get results from people without doing the work, right? That's when you've got great leadership, and you can actually tell even in a culture. I mean, I had different offices, so I could tell when a leader was actually leading by example, because you could feel it when you like step foot in their culture, right? Production was high. When production's low, the drama's high.
Always 100%. When money's low, that's where the drama will go.
Yeah. And then, like you said, I think our stories relate where when you've gone through the recession and you're on the verge of bankruptcy, we were on the verge of like bankruptcy as well, and couponing, it humbles you a lot and going, do I get rid of my properties, or will this even come around? And it's like months and months. And, quickly you realize that your savings can go and vanish when you've got lots of properties.
Yeah, you got to be resilient, right? You got to figure a way out. And it's easy just to hit the reset button, which so many people did. And especially when everybody around you, you remember everybody around you mentioned agents going to foreclosure. Literally every agent's convincing every other agent to either let their house go to foreclosure or let their house short sale. Yeah, we've seen a bunch of real estate cycles. It sounds like we're probably been pretty close in the mix of the real estate cycle. I got my license in 2006, and then I gave it up, I think, in 2021. And we got into the same reasons. One of the things that really, prior to us coming on this call today, that really got me excited about talking to you was some of the things that you said on Instagram about children's books. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because your children are a little bit older than mine, but I think that like we're in a crazy world right now. I think we all both recognize that. And kids have access to information that they've never had before, but it's also important what information that they do get. And so I want to talk a little bit about, not only being a coach for people, but being a coach to your children and how you're doing that and what suggestions you have for other people.
Well, I think as a parent, you're naturally a coach, right? Because you're guiding, there's no parent book. You're guiding your kids through life in the best way that you can. Because what may work for Troy may not work for our household, right? So I'm not a big believer of like, well, we do it this way. I don't feel that there's a right or wrong way. I think find the dynamic of what works for you and your family and lead that way. So when it comes to coaching my kids play sports. Both of them have always played sports. I've also played sports when I was young. My husband has played sports. So I think that has also taught them a lot about teamwork, discipline, commitment, adversity. When things get tough, am I that parent that's going to make excuses for them? Absolutely not. I've never talked to a coach for them about playing time. I'm not a believer in that. I'm not a believer in making an excuse for my kids because I feel like I would handicap them and rob them of the opportunity of real growth. So when it comes to adversity, I'm like, how are you going to handle that? At the end of the day, it's also character. I mean, my son right now is getting recruited by several colleges. He wants to play D1. So he's got 15 offers right now, 5 Ivy League.
Football, right?
Basketball.
Basketball. Okay.
Yeah.
What position?
Point guard.
Point guard. Okay. Awesome.
So they've actually played at a really highly competitive, level. They've traveled, played on national teams. Both. He actually had played both for football and basketball, and I think there's a lot when it comes to them learning a ton when it comes to life lessons in that, because there were plenty of times the road's not easy. There's very limited scholarships, especially right now with NIL. There's just so many different factors that I'm even learning about. But at the end of the day, it's the whole package. It's not just you being an athlete. It's how you're going to represent some of these schools that you decide to commit to.
Yeah, for sure. So you're living in Arizona right now, and you're coaching lots of people. How are you how do you kind of select your client base? I'm sure that since your time's limited right now, you try to prioritize who you work with and who you don't work with. And there's a lot of people who need coaching in real estate. And for those of you guys who don't know, I mean, real estate can be an extremely lucrative career. Like you can make millions and millions of dollars per year, but most agents barely get by. Like if you were to tap into it, I bet you 85% of the agents barely get by and 15% of the agents crush it.
Yeah. So my favorite people to work with are people that love to grow probably more teams, because there's so many different dynamics and it's more strategies. I'm not an accountability coach. It's more of what strategy are we going to put from where you want to go. So I have a lot of teams that are probably the number one at their companies today, whether it's EXP or in their region at KW or in their state. And it gets really fun when they've got some legs to their business and we're able to put a few more systems so that they could actually scale.
Now, with the NAR ruling coming down, I haven't dove too deep into it, but that's what's on everybody's mind. My personal belief is that it's a lawyer who just whacked the NAR for a good bit of commission, and probably it's going to make a few changes, and then it's going to be to business as usual. What opinions do you have about that whole situation and how things are going to come after it?
Yeah, I think for every state it varies, right? There's not one. I think people are still trying to figure it out. Just like it sounds like you were in the REO and short sale days. We didn't know back then. If we did a short sale, we had no idea how much we were going to get paid, because the bank could actually say, you know what, the bank needs to net this amount of money, and you worked on this short sale deal for 9 months, and you're just like, okay, I'll take $1,000 at this point, right?
Yeah.
So for us in Arizona, we've always had it laid out as far as commission. We've always had buyer broker. I remember when I was a team leader coaching the agents going, hey, like, go get your buyer broker signed. And at the end of the day, it's whether or not you're going to fight it, right? But at least you've got something in writing. I think you're going to have to be able to articulate your value. And I think whether you're experienced or not experienced, the way you communicate is going to be so key, whether it's you building a brand today on social media or you articulating your value to a client. I think communication, and I tell my kids this too, is like, if there was one skill that I wish I would have paid attention to more of when I was growing up, is probably communication. Because English is my third language. And so I realize how important it is, whether it's video today, whether it's building your own brand, whether it's you dealing with clients. I think that also, like, communication can help influence a lot of people, even when you are presenting.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Do you speak Tagalog and Spanish, or what is your three languages?
I wish. All my brothers speak fluent Spanish, and a lot of my cousins, but it's Tagalog, Kapampangan, which is another dialect in the Philippines, and then English.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we are trying to get the hang of the Spanish. You go to Europe, which we were just there, and everybody's speaking 5 languages. U.S. speaking barely one coherently. I think that's a big problem with our education system, to be honest with you. Like, why wouldn't they just add mandatory learn 3 different languages if all the other countries are doing it?
Agree 100%.
So what's going on with Arizona right now, where everybody that I seem to be meeting these days is moving to Arizona? Like, I know so many people, and I lived in Las Vegas for the last 15 years. It was a great place to do business. I would consider Phoenix, Arizona, like Las Vegas without casinos. I mean, basically, yeah. and a couple, it used to be with sports teams, but now that's changing as well. So why do you think there's such, Rich Dad, I know that's one of your heroes. He lives down there. Like, a lot of his guys live down there. It's starting to become like almost the financial hub, and maybe even the guru hub of like America. Why do you think people are so attracted to living down there?
Weather for 9 months of the year. You probably know that from Las Vegas. There's golf, there's resorts. I think even when we invested here, we invested both in Las Vegas and in Arizona, or in the East Valley. Then we went into the West Valley. Is we looked at it as, where would we want to raise our kids? They're both warm. And our thought was, let's try Phoenix, Arizona. And if we don't like it, we can always move back, and we don't have to deal with the casinos. And maybe it was one of my rentals that I had out there on the Strip. Yeah. And my experience with that made me say no to Las Vegas. My very first property that I bought, it became a marijuana house, nice. All the things. And they would pay.
Remember the address?
Oh yeah. They would pay a year at a time. And then I get a call from Clark County while I'm in college, and I'm like, Dad, you got to help me. I just got a phone call from the police, and I need to go fly out to Vegas.
Yeah. Super stressful.
Yeah. So I just thought, what if my kids get into trouble? And so I think there's so much growth and so much opportunity still in both places. Yeah. And it's very easy to get to, just like Las Vegas, as far as flights. It's pretty centralized, closer to the middle, where you can always get a flight anywhere throughout the country.
So when people hire you for a coach, what are they struggling with most, Raquel? Like, what are they trying to get through? Because I've talked to a fair bit of coaches, but it's hard to coaching people is an art, right? It's like you got to really be able to be multifaceted and figure out how do I help this person versus that person. And so how do you adapt and what is the most big problem that most of your, I guess your mentees or your students are facing?
So first, I think that there's a competitive landscape because I think when I go online, all these people are coaches today.
Yeah.
Right. And so the first thing that I would say is look at the experience of what they're actually coaching. Like, did they just have 1 year where they were a top producer and now they're coaching, you know, how to become a top producer without even understanding the cycle? Because I'm hearing from some of the people that come to me was like, hey, I thought I hired somebody to be a top producer, but they don't know how to deal with today's market. Right. Because it's easy to be a top producer in a hot market. Not necessarily, or to run a team in a hot market when, you know, expenses can fly off the wall, but it's not always easy. I think that's where things get exposed when it's a slower market. And so when people come to me, they either have a challenge with like they've been stuck at a certain production level, or they've been stuck with their team, or they don't necessarily feel like their team's growing, or they actually want to recruit and build their rev share. So that's one, is like, how do I actually recruit and build my network in some of these cloud brokerages?
That's a big one right now, isn't it?
That is a big one. And it was real because one of my clients came and had just transferred to EXP in the pandemic. And he's like, Raquel, I know you've expanded. I know you've recruited lots of people. I don't know how to recruit. And he's got one of the top teams in the country. And you look at their rev share, because I look at their numbers and I'm like, it's not a bad gig to have, you know, to have some of the people that you see making $500,000 in rev share or $1 million in rev share.
Yeah, it was a great model that exploded. I mean, I think Keller Williams was really the first one to put it on the deal there. And then once, what was the first one that you just mentioned? I know there's Real, and then there's
Real, yeah, with an EXP.
EXP really kind of hit the ground running with the stocks and all of the other things. But you know, I have a partner of mine who's probably sold 5,000 homes, and he's looking to exit from his brokerage. And he's like, I've got nothing I can sell. People, you know, real estate, you can't really sell it unless you got a property management department. Yep. And he's like, what do I do? I was like, well, you got to figure out a way to transition these people into one of those places like that. And it seems like now that EXP has got Keller Williams for the longest time has been the fastest growing company. Century 21 has been the most well-known company, world renowned, right? And then now it seems like these other two are really starting to make a gain. If you were starting brand new as an agent right now, what would you advise people to do?
If I was starting brand new in today's market, I definitely would join a team. I would get some legs, get some experience. Today, I'd actually really consider these cloud brokerages. Of course, I'm biased. I would love to say go to Real because it has so many more options. And it's one of the fastest, it is the fastest publicly traded company that's growing, and the leadership is amazing. So I would join a team because you won't have to put your systems in. You're learning from people that actually have experience, that have business sense as well, if they're running a team. One of the things that I would ask is some of the team members is, how long have you been on the team and what are you actually making? Right? Because I think that tells you a lot. I think some people have teams that are just bodies, but some people actually have a team that has machines that actually can produce transactions for that team member.
Yeah, I think that would be my same advice. Get on a team. Learn. It's so hard to go out there by yourself,
especially right now.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Real versus EXP. Would you like Real better? Tell me specifically. Like, I mean, they're pretty new. I know that a friend of mine had a brokerage in town in Las Vegas, and he moved everything to Real. And you know, that's when I started first hearing about it. But it seems like they're coming along pretty quick.
They are coming along. I think EXP has proven the model, and I have friends at all brokerages and I coach all brokerages. So I just want to put that disclaimer,
Yeah, for sure.
right? Is I think EXP proved the model of like RevShare is a real thing, right? They grew really fast. And then you got Real that came right behind them and said, there's a couple things that we're going to do a little bit different, right? Like the co-sponsorship, that nobody has to be, it's one Real. I'm going to help everybody, not just if you're in my downline or not. And I think that it really impacts culture. And if you and I went to an event or through an event, it'd be, Troy and Raquel putting something together versus like against each other because we're not in the same downline or tribe.
Yeah, that's interesting. That model, I look at it and I'm like, it's a pretty good model. Like as you think about other businesses and stuff, I don't want to, kind of when I got out of real estate and gave my license, about like my identity went away. I've always identified it as an agent, and then now full blown investor. And I don't even talk about agents that much, but
and I think the other thing that I would add to that is probably not like if you're an agent that's actually in production, the split's better, right? The split's better at Real. And then I would take a look at leadership. And I think that one of the reasons why it's the fastest growing is you have people that have actually sold companies, in the real estate space, exited companies. And I think that's why it's also driving some of this stock because they understand the investment side because some of them have worked on Wall Street.
Yeah, totally. Now, you mentioned that you're active and an active investor.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit
I'd
about
like to be a little bit more active.
Yeah.
We all would, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think I'm too active. I have a problem turning down deals. So, when you're a deal junkie, you're always cash poor. So,
yeah. I think even when you own businesses, you're cash poor.
Yeah, if you're investing in your business, generally speaking, you're going to be cash poor. I mean,
like you're always thinking about like, do we have enough? Do we have enough?
Yeah, I don't think there's ever enough, right? So, like, talk to me about like as you see the market right now. So many people. I mean, this is the highest interest rates that I've seen since I got my license. It was kind of similar, in my opinion, to 2008. Is like, what's going to happen? Well, people are still buying and they're still selling. Mm-hmm. Like they're just not paying attention to it. Yeah, you've taken certain buyers out of the market just because they're priced out, and obviously that top end is out, right? But the top end is in, but the top end that's, maybe that, I guess in specific markets, it's going to change. But out here in Kansas City, it's going to be probably 400 to, 800,000. That market's been shrunk a lot, but, the first time home buyers, very active, right? And how do you coach people through that whole situation?
When it comes to investing. So I mainly coach on the business side. It's mainly when I invest, it's only for my own good. And I'm part of like a wealth mastermind right now. So that kind of just keeps me in line and check for what we want to build. So we meet 4 times a year through our wealth mastermind.
Okay, cool. I was probably a little bit confusing about the question. With people worried about interest rates right now with their buyers, what kind of strategies do you teach these people to get them out of the worrying about the interest rates, the things that they can't control?
People are constantly buying real estate, right? And you can never time the market. I've been in this for 25 years, and I always go back and go, God, I wish I would have bought my own REOs that I sold or my friends sold, right? I mean, we picked up a few of them at the time when nobody was buying, and they were 30,000, 50,000. Luckily, it panned out, but like nobody was buying. I mean, these properties that had cement in the toilets and, but that's the time when you actually buy. I think right now, as I'm, seeing inventory climb with, some of the people that I coach, I was like, actually, this is a time where buyers should get in the market because you probably could negotiate because sellers are thinking that their house should have sold and you probably could get a better deal today.
Yeah. When everybody's scared, it's the time to buy. I remember specifically like that. We worked with, I don't know if you remember LPS, yes, which was Fidelity. And I was a big agent for them. And I had started buying pretty heavily in 2009 because I bought poorly. And that was my out. And I remember everybody's like, why are you buying? I'm like, they're $20,000 a house, and somebody's like, well, they're going to be lower next year. And I was like, I'll buy more. And it just, I'm like looking at these houses were built in the 1940s for less than I'm buying it today. So how can I lose? And everybody thought it was the end of the world.
I used to tell people, like, you can't even buy a car for the prices of these homes, and some of them, like, they cash flowed. We were able to, flip some of them. And I think, like I said, I always go back and go, I wish I would have bought more. So I think right now when people are on the fence there's opportunity in everything. Yeah. There's opportunity as long as the numbers work, as long as you know your strategy. If you know how to dispo, or if you're going to buy and hold, or you're going to Airbnb, or you're going to flip the property, like, you just got to be realistic. And I think having a license is kind of like a cheat code to the market, because you understand the market. You are an agent. You represent buyers and sellers, or sometimes even investors. Why not do it for yourself?
Yeah, and that's another thing that I wanted to ask your opinion about. I think that a lot of agents that I talk to have a big ego about working with investors. And the reality is, if you're brand new and you want experience, the best thing to do is write hundreds of offers, right? And and some people, they value their time too much, even though they don't have any deals. And they're like, well, I'm not going to work with this investor because he's never getting any of his offers accepted. It's like, my advice to any agent who's brand new is, like, work with an investor. If the person's buying money, and so what if they're writing 20 offers and getting one accepted? You're getting a lot of practice with that particular agent. How do you feel about that?
I agree with you. You're going to learn so much when you work with an investor. I know when I was an REO agent, I saw the same LLCs happen all the time that were writing on all of our properties. And I was like, holy cow. And now when I look back, and they own a ton in Phoenix, or they bulk sale them, I'm like, you learn so much. And you also learn how to negotiate too, because they will come back to you if you provide value. And again, you can communicate. They'll go, Raquel, I think I need to dump all of our properties now.
Yeah, 100%. And so many people are so short-sighted with just that transaction that they can't see, like, oh, that might lead to more. Like with the REOs for myself, Raquel, it was like exactly what you just said right there. Like, I'm on the sidelines watching the banks negotiate against the investors and going, ooh, I just learned something. Ooh, I'm going to do that next time. And so when it was my time to buy, which right away after that, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to say something. I need a reduction. I'm going to say this, because you were just watching these banks and all these investors come in and do it. And everybody else was scared. There was not a lot of people buying. Right.
Yeah. I think the first thing when you get your license, if you could learn first before, like, every listing that you go to, could I actually buy this? Because you will make more if you have that mindset of, can I actually own this property versus just get a commission check from a listing? That's
so smart to say. And I don't even want to reflect back about all the properties that I listed as an agent.
Right? I mean, me too. Yeah. So I said, I wish I would have learned that sooner. Now it's like, I look at properties when we go to list them. I'm like, could we actually buy it? Does it make sense for us to buy it? How could we strategically buy this instead of list it?
That is probably the best piece of advice I've heard anybody say in a long time. Nobody ever talks about that. Is like, if you're an agent, you should not go with a commission mindset. You should go with an investment mindset first and a solution mindset first. Like, how can I solve this person's problem? Is it just about me? Like, especially people who list people's houses who are going into pre-foreclosure. It's like, or foreclosure, like, do you know that you could maybe like catch them up and buy the house and do a subject
keep the mortgage, right? All these things. And I think the resources today are so much more accessible. There's meetup groups, there's social media. They could reach out to you. They go like, who do you know that has the cash that could buy this today?
Right.
Like, a deal is a deal, and people will come with their cash.
100%. Let's kind of cap off with social media. Okay. I reinvented myself. I'm 46 now. I never was on social media. Well, I was on social media, and then I got, a girlfriend, and I got tagged in like Facebook, and I'm like, I'm out. Like, I'm not dealing with that crap anymore. I'm out. And then a buddy of mine in Las Vegas, Ryan Pineda, was buying properties from me. And I'm like, why are you putting all your checks on social media? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? This is like, don't tell anybody what you got. That's how I was kind of an old school guy. And he's like, well, this is the reason I'm doing it. And he explained it to me. And I was like, oh man, I'm all in. I'm going 100%. And so I'm, 3 years into being 100% in on social media. And it sounds like you are further along in your journey than I am. But you had to reinvent yourself probably just like I did. Tell me about that journey and why you did it.
I was private before, and I remember going to some of these events. And of course, I had a mentor, and I also have, like, Sharon was my mentor for a really, really long time, still is. And he said, Raquel, brand is the most efficient business model. And I said, explain that further. He said, if you were to go on Oprah today, if you were to actually have a picture with Beyonce, or just name somebody famous, like, people would know your name tomorrow, or like as soon as that posted, they would look you up. So, it really got me. And obviously, even hearing the Hermosi speak, it's like you see them build brand. I see it even in high school today. Kids getting, because my kids are in high school and college recruiting, like, that is a deal. That is something today that they talk about is brand, is NIL money. And so I think, like, for you as an agent or for you as a spokesperson of anything, like, you've got to build a personal brand, because that is not going away. I knew it wasn't going away when people kept saying, like, you got to build a brand on social media. And I mean, there's so many things that you learn through it. Some people say, like, it's out the algorithm. And I think it's, think about building a brand where you don't have to share everything. It's like how you show up, how people can connect with you. I mean, there's so many different ways to build brand. It's like whatever is going to work for you. I definitely think you shouldn't be private, because people are going to look you up anyways. I think if you're an agent and I was a seller, the first thing that I would do is I'd put their name in Google. If I was going to interview a listing agent, and I would look at the first things that come up are all of their social profiles, and I would learn a little bit more about them. And if they hadn't posted something or they hadn't marketed a property, I would think that they weren't doing it full time.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%. It's just, it's like, if they can't market themselves as a seller, how are they going to market my home is what I would think.
100%. So what sort of things have you done to grow your social and get good at social?
Well, I'm not great at it, but thank you for that, because I think it's always a work in progress. I always want to change everything. I do have a team behind me that handles majority of our social today. But I would say you have to stay active. I think the quickest way to being active is what I tell some of our agents is like a 5-5-5, right? 5 stories a day, 5 posts a week, 5 DMs, because conversion happens in conversations, and stories work today because people react to them and then they're in your DMs. So then you can do a follow-up and you can check them out. Sometimes, like, you can see who's viewing everything. And so, I just came back last night from Chicago and I could see who's viewing my stories, right? And if I was a recruiter, guess what? I would think about, who are these that are top agents that I would want in my brokerage or on my team? Mm-hmm. Or are there people that are looking at my stuff that I would potentially love to collaborate with or have partnerships with? Mm-hmm. I think at the end of the day, business is still a relationship game. And this is just a tool to get there, I think, to build that relationship quicker.
Yeah. And I would just add that, some of the added benefits that I never thought about social media was, like, you kind of gotta pulp it, right? You've got this thing that you can, once you get to the certain point, people are like, oh, that guy's legit, I believe him. And then you can get in front of the right people where you may not have been able to get in front of those people before without that audience. But now, like, for me, if I call somebody that's a local council person, if I call somebody who's, maybe on the Kansas City Chiefs or maybe whatever, there's a stronger possibility of me with 600,000 followers across all socials getting them to recognize me than with no socials, with no social proof or anything like that. And so, yeah, 100%. And the funny thing is, I was on YouTube in like 2005 and I never did anything. Like, I didn't know, when you don't know what you're doing, you just do it all wrong. Right.
Right.
And I think it's so important. And so many people don't stick with it. So I think that if you stick with it and you stay consistent with it, like you said, you'll just grow and learn and everything like that. I think that's great advice. Raquel, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge. How do people follow your story, your journey?
You can always connect with me on Instagram. That's my most favorite platform. at It's Raquel Q. And I'm happy to answer any questions, to have a conversation.
Awesome. Now, one final thing. So Instagram is my favorite platform, but I'm starting to move, I think. And I'm
Where are you moving?
I believe I'm going to X. Like, I have put all of my heart and soul into Instagram. It's my personal favorite. But as I've started to kind of follow things since Elon's taken over and I just started to get involved, I find out there's more access to information on X. And I have 200 followers, I think, on X, and I've got like 90,000 on Instagram, but I don't think I have to. Instagram, I think, is just going to continue to grow, and X, I got to probably work at. So I'm interested. Have you looked into that platform at all?
Yeah, the only reason why I'm on X today is probably for recruiting, because all the college recruiters are on there. And so if you only look at my stuff, it's me reposting my son's stuff. But I probably agree with you. I think the next platform of choice that we're probably going to tackle is YouTube. It's a beast. I do think there's longevity to it. It's a huge SEO. I agree with both platforms, but I think our team is going to be focusing on YouTube.
YouTube has been tough to grow. It's been. I think you just got to use the shorts and stuff, but the long form is the toughest on that part to grow. I can tell you that right now.
Yes.
It's been a super challenge for me as well. So, I would really appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing your story, your journey, and I can tell that you've got just an awesome aura about you. Hope that your kids get into the NBA. Hope to see it. What team is he going to play on? Is he going to be on the Arizona, or is he going like the Phoenix Suns, or what do you think?
I have no idea. I think let's get them through college first. And as long as I don't have to pay $1, that's awesome for me.
That would be awesome.
We'll take an investment. We'll use his money or his NIL to go buy real estate.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being flexible with your time. And I know your time is your most important commodity. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Troy. Honored to be here and always want to support in all the things that you guys do for the community.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
I've got an amazing podcast. We've had over 150 entrepreneurs, investors, businessmen, businesswomen, politicians, and we have interesting conversation. Think of it like Joe Rogan meets real estate meets going down the rabbit hole as Troy Kearns. My podcast is something that I really enjoy. The guests that we bring on are super informative, and they will add a tremendous amount of value to you. Comment the word podcast, and I'll send you a link to it so you can check it out and let me know what you think.